Yo, what is going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. So I did not expect to be making another goddamn trade video, let alone another video like 2 hours after the last one, after we got the Markstrom one, which was a little bit surprising that it happened now. This was a full-blown shock. Pierre-Luc Dubois is heading to the Washington Capitals for Darcy Kuemper to the LA Kings. No retention, just a one-for-one, a straight one-for-one, a straight Taylor Hall for Adam Larson back when that happened. And this is fucking insane. This is obviously insane when looking at it. Pierre-Luc Dubois, 7 years left, $8.5 million on his contract, 1 year into the goddamn extension, as well as Darcy Kuemper having 3 years left at $5.25 million. I'm not kidding. Like, I was brain dead for a solid like 10 minutes, just staring at my phone, being like, what is going on? Why would these two teams do it? Why? What the hell? It is just genuinely such a mind-blowing. You could have mocked up 9,000 different fake trades this offseason, including PLD, including Darcy Kuemper, and you probably wouldn't have put the two together for a goddamn one-for-one deal. It is absolutely insane, but now let's dive into it. Let's dive into looking at both of these players who both had absolute dog shit seasons relative to their contract this year, and whether or not one of these can bounce back in this deal end up being pretty good. Now, when looking at this, looking at Darcy Kuemper, his last 3 years has been a pretty stark fall off. In 2022 with the Washington Capitals, had a 921, did kind of shit his pants in the playoffs, but they still won the goddamn Stanley Cup. Then was pretty solid on a bad Washington team with a 908, and then this season lost the starting job to Charlie Lindgren. When looking at his underlying numbers, very good the prior 2 years, but this year did really fall off, and he is 34 years old, 3 years left at $5.25 million. It's not that encouraging. It's not that encouraging, but at least he is on a shorter term deal. You don't have to worry about 4 extra years comparatively. And although he's getting serious money, he's not getting like upper echelon starting money. He's about in the middle of the pack at $5.25 million. So if you're the LA Kings and you didn't have a goaltender this offseason, you were probably going to either go out and trade for one of the guys or maybe re-sign Cam Talbot to around $4.5 million. So instead of buying out PLD, which was talked about a lot, considering it was only 33% of his contract, it wasn't that bad. It was like $2.5 million for the next 14 years, but still, it wasn't going to be that bad. When looking at it, I understand why they bring in Darcy Kuemper. I don't love it, considering it seems like he's on the back end of his career. He's on the back nine, but maybe he can turn it around. Him and David Riddick as your goalie tandem in the year 2024 is a little bit concerning, but I definitely understand it. Now, when looking at the Washington Capitals with Pierre-Luc Dubois, it's not good. 60 points in 81 games. Then he looked very solid in Winnipeg in his last year, but this year, 40 points in 82 games. And the underlying numbers did also take a little bit of a dip this season. Not exactly the best two-way center for the most part, even though he is a rather bigger guy. For Washington, you're obviously thinking that Darcy Kuemper's cooked. Pierre-Luc Dubois is still only 25 years old. There's a higher likelihood of PLD eventually being worth that contract, but PLD obviously has 7 years left versus 3 years. I think PLD can return to being a 60-point guy. A 60-point guy isn't worth $8.5 million, but I do think that he's not going to be putting up 40-point seasons going forward. My thing for this is I would have taken PLD on a flyer, maybe if he had 2, 3, even 4 years left. I would understand this move, but the fact that the Capitals aren't even going to be good for the next 2 to 3 years, probably even 3, 4 years, they're eventually going to need a rebuild. I don't understand why you're taking on a PLD for the next 7 years. When you're trying to come out of your eventual retool and rebuild, he's not even going to be in his prime anymore. He's going to be 31, 32 years old and making $8.5 million. It's a very weird move. If I was the Washington Capitals, I would have just let Darcy Kuemper's contract eventually run out. I think that this is weird. This is just overall very weird for a Washington team that sold pretty heavily at the deadline to go out and get a guy like Pierre-Luc Dubois that is not worth his contract right now, not even remotely close to his contract. 4th team in what, 6, 7? No, it's probably like 7 seasons in the NHL at this point. Not going to dive into his locker room if he's a cancer or not in the locker room, but objectively has bounced from team to team, and you're on the you're taking him on for 7 years at $8.5 million. It is definitely a massive risk. On top of the fact they're paying him and Tom Wilson the next 7 years, $15 million combined. That is extremely scary. But when looking at the Washington Capitals, I guess maybe you keep him for a couple years, see if he eventually turns it around. And then if he does, he's worth 8.5. I get the salary caps going up in 4 or 5 years. An $8.5 million centerman is just going to be a second line center, like a decent second line center. I fully am aware of that. but I don't know if Pierre-Luc Dubois is the guy that you want in your locker room, winning culture and overall bouncing back. Now, going back to the LA Kings perspective on this, I think that this isolated deal isn't that bad for the LA Kings, getting a guy like Darcy Kuemper that can maybe be your starter next year, and on top of the fact that he has less term. But when you factor in, here's my tweet for it, look at those numbers, but when looking at the fact that Rob Blake really traded Velarde, Iafallo, Kupari in the 37th overall pick for 1 year of PLD at 8.5, getting 40 points, and then Darcy Kuemper, 890 save percentage. It is truly insane that Rob Blake even has a job to begin with still in the goddamn NHL with the LA Kings. When looking at how he flubbed this, he went all in on Pierre-Luc Dubois, traded most of his depth, two of his key depth pieces, and Velarde, who's just straight up better than Pierre-Luc Dubois at this point, as well as Rasmus Kupari, as well as that second round pick being the Montreal Canadiens second round pick, not even their own. This is going to go down as one of the biggest failed experiments honestly in NHL history in terms of going out and getting a guy. And again, getting a guy that wanted out of Columbus, literally quit on Columbus towards the end of the season. There's that famous clip of him just not giving a shit while he was out there, and then Torts ended up benching him. The PLD experience in LA is just shockingly bad. And I think that also just goes to show the fact that Rob Blake was willing to give up on him after just 1 year in the organization. I think that's pretty telling that Pierre-Luc Dubois maybe isn't the best player in terms of overall winning for a team, and he was more than happy to ship him out to Washington. Now, what this means going forward, is Washington going to be aggressive in trying to make the playoffs next season? I'm honestly not too sure. I'm not sure what their plan is, considering Pierre-Luc Dubois is 25, 26. He is in his hypothetical prime of his career, or entering it at this point. Most guys hit their prime at around 25 to 27. So that's also just why I'm confused. Why I'm confused on this deal. What is Brian McClellan cooking up in terms of this Washington Capitals core? I really like the way that they were trending in terms of being this retooling and eventually rebuilding once Alexander Ovechkin got the goal record, kind of tear it down once then. But now they're going to have PLD on your books at $8.5 million the next 7 seasons. It definitely complicates things in terms of LA. I think that they're going to give Darcy Kuemper the net this season. If he does kind of flub it up in terms of this season, then with 2 years left at 5.25, that becomes a lot more manageable to trade, maybe even buy out. So for the LA Kings, I think the LA Kings, considering they got to be this highly competitive team, they get off of Pierre-Luc Dubois' money. I do like it more so for them. I would give the LA Kings a C+. I would give the Washington Capitals a D+, if you've seen it already on my Instagram. Not saying either of these teams absolutely hit it out of the park, because even though the LA Kings got off the Pierre-Luc Dubois contract, they're still paying a potential backup $5.25 million the next 3 seasons. It is one of the most fascinating trades that I have seen in recent memories in terms of two teams just coming together and saying, here's arguably our worst goddamn asset. Do you want it? When looking at it, this also just came to my mind. I understand the Tom Wilson extension when it happened, 7 years, $6.5 million. He's not going to be remotely close to that, but he actually is like a leader, actually like a good locker room presence. I just don't know. I just don't know what the Washington Capitals are doing. And as an Islanders fan, I am ecstatic that they're going down this route of trying to stay competitive instead of tearing it down, because I really liked some of their young guys, especially Ryan Leonard. It is just absolutely fascinating to watch. So let me know in the comments, what do you think about this trade? Who do you think wins it? I can understand why you'd maybe think Pierre-Luc Dubois is going to bounce back. I think in the next 3 years, Pierre-Luc Dubois is going to be more valuable to the Washington Capitals than the LA Kings. But again, the Capitals aren't going to win fat jack fucking dick over the next 3 years. So it's very interesting. Let me know in the comments, what do you think? I might be back here another three hours when another fucking when Jacob Trouba gets traded for God knows who, or Anders Lee gets shipped out. It is absolute madness, and the Stanley Cup Finals are still going on. It is fucking insane. I'll be seeing the next one.